We have a tripod and a camera. We've rearranged the camera setup today. So if you need to go to the other side, if you're on that side of the room, please go around the back, and then this group, please head out that way. Again, please don't connect to the Adobe Connect session from here in the room, and your Wi-Fi access information is on the back of your name badge. Thank you.
Everybody hear me? Everybody hear me? Hang on. Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Bob Inscoe. I'm an analyst on the. I'm an analyst on the ISS project, the International Space Station. I'm a member of the Command and Control team. We're responsible for several CSCIs, and this morning I'm going to talk to you about a small system we put together to provide data from a report that we already generated, so that we don't have people trying to manually dig through text reports to find metrics for assurance metrics and coverage and so forth. Where's the menus hiding me? Yes, somewhere. Next couple of slides. Into this presentation. Sort of boil the data down. One. Started out doing a traditional didn't take helping part of that analysis. All the information I needed was all. Talk to you with it. Use called the by work activity. Now we do it monthly. Please bear with that. Describe a little bit about the phrasing patterns of the software. Very simple. Really just the quickest way to get point A to B. Elaborate. I also want to talk a little bit about the ability of the product necessary. Statement. Pick up data. Patience. Change it. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about some other doing familiar with software automation. Similar. The problem we had was we needed to provide metric data that people could access, evidence-based. milestone report, transitions, massive, has to pull the data out. Our software transition readiness review. We really had no way to do that without digging through one report per month, and a stage generally lasts a year, so it becomes pretty tedious, pretty quick. We'd already gotten approval to use the byware as a source for our EBA data, but again, we had the hang up that nobody could really use that data. It was there, it was in the report, but you really couldn't get your hands on it without a lot of manual processing. So the innovation team took this on as a task to develop something to provide that data. This is one of the first things we did on the ISS innovation team. We started out, we generated an operational concept, data entry screen, defined a process and a related state machine, which I'll show you later, to show how the inputs move from analyst to lead to report and back and forth. Also took a little time and find a template document so that I could mail merge the data once people entered it to generate the report. Did a little proof of concept work there. And I also generated a data entry panel so that people could see where we were headed and provide comments and get them exactly what they wanted. However, I didn't get to the point of including the lower level metric data in that, because at that point is when I realized when I'm using the report as my analysis source, then I should be using the report as my data source. Here's an example of the template document that I came up with. Anything that's in brackets and preceded or followed by exclamation points, such as this line here. Can you see the pointer? That line there, that would be filled in, or it defines an area. For example, this one defines an area. So what you would have gotten there is a section that just said CCSR 14. That's CSCI and release. So that way it can select what goes into this area from the database based on that section. So the rest of it is just template. You can see I have a start and end user data area. That would have been filled in by the data that the users entered. And it would all fall under this section of CCSR 14 milestone. And then you'll see a second user data area below that that would have fallen within the section CCSR 14, but outside the milestone. And this was just sort of following the way that we format the report already. So again, that was just a proof of concept. Can we do this? As I mentioned, here's the first cut of the state machine that we had, and you can see it's kind of complex. The analyst provides inputs over here, puts them into draft, and can promote it to eligible for report. The lead can reject that. The lead can select it for report, can decide not to put it on the report. Just because we provide an input doesn't mean it ends up on the final report. And you can go back and forth between the states as the analyst, or whether the lead changes their mind. It gave a way for the user to copy data from something they've already done to start a new item. And same thing here, only this one was not selected. This one was selected and closed. You can see it gets kind of hairy, kind of fast. And you know, the great thing about a state machine diagram is it hides all the complexities. So there's a lot more that would have had to been done than what it seemed like here to make this work. And here's the data editor I came up with. The user would have to fill all this out. And one thing you'll notice, they enter data for the stage, they identify the stage, the CSCI, the section, all these sorts of things. But then they also have to enter the text for the report. And again, this got me thinking, if you're going to have to type it in here, wouldn't it be easier just to type it into Word and to try to put it in here? You don't have spell checking, no formatting. It just seemed to be headed the wrong direction. Which is what I'm saying here. You know, we came pretty far with this. I think we spent maybe a couple weeks, one meeting to the next of the innovation team to get where we were. It was really not even close to complete. Again, we had the state machine that's going to turn into just a nest we would have to unwind. We hadn't started on any of that. The data entry screen didn't have any implementation behind it. There were a lot of pick lists there that we would have had to populate, a lot of data validation that would have had to gone on. And again, we only had the top level data. We didn't have the specific metric data in there, and no one had decided what metrics they wanted to capture. And currently we have 14 columns that get selected out of this report for each input, is what we call those paragraphs. So that means I would have had a data entry screen with at least 14 columns. People would have had to have entered one or more, possibly none, for each paragraph that they entered. So again, I'm just illustrating to you that the traditional IT approach was just adding workload to us. And as everyone knows, you've got to do more with less, and this was not going to get us there. Okay, and so here, this describes a few of the things, again, that I yet had to do. I had to define the data dictionary. I had to come up with an entry screen so that people could enter data. And again, I realized that the primary source for figuring out what data I needed was a report. And it just began to weigh on my mind, why am I reinventing the wheel here? We already have it. And then I noticed some usability issues. You can't really enter text into a data entry form like you can into Word. You don't have the formatting, spell checking, things like that you need. You would have to have someone as a data administrator to take care of it. If you have a problem, the data structure gets corrupted, these sorts of things happen. You have to have someone on the hook to take care of that for you. And the state machine would have to be managed. And again, that thing started to look like I won't even say a miniature orbit, but another orbit. So we really wanted to avoid that. And one thing that kept coming back to me, and I'd written it in the ConOps, that the system should be able to reverse itself. You should be able to go from the data to the report to the data, just so that you can test that things are moving through in the right way, because if you can reverse the data, you know you made your first transformation correctly. So then I just asked myself, could I write something that would pull the data out based on the phrasing in the report? And some people, many of you probably play video games in your spare time. Me, I write code. So I just took one weekend and thought, well, can I do this? And took it to the innovation team. And obviously I could. I'm going to talk a little bit about the report now. The Bi-War report is something that we've been generating. I've been here since 2000, and we've been generating them all along. I'm sure we did them before that. So it's something that we're used to. Analysts know how to do it. They're used to do it. We track our data so that we can do it as quickly as possible when it's due. Every one of us writes our inputs. We funnel it up to the team lead, and they prefer those to be in near final form. They don't want to have to be editing our inputs because they really don't know at that point what we might have done. There are certain guidelines placed on our inputs. We have certain formats we have to use, and those get leveraged by the tool to identify the data. And then we have a team administrative assistant who goes in and enforces all the paragraph styles, because when you start cutting and pasting things into a Word document, you lose your paragraph styles if you're not careful. And so we have Shelley Courtney, who takes care of that for us and does a great job getting this report out every month. And the primary customer for this is actually Tom McCauley, our NASA PM. And every time we deliver a report, we have a meeting. We go over everything in it, make sure he understands any details in it, any questions he has are answered. So this thing is kind of time consuming already. You can see here are some of the metrics that we could use as evidence. For example, we have the CSCI and revision. That identifies the assembly stage, which currently we're on basically a one-year cycle. So everything gets updated once a year, if it gets updated at all. This is specific to ISS, of course. Everybody else's world is different. We identify the different types of reviews we've done, whether it's an in-process review or a formal milestone review. You can see we identify what type of review, what we reviewed, how we reviewed it. We identify any related documents in there that drove this change. We keep track of our issue counts and whether or not the item was closed. The Bi-War is not really your source to find out the final disposition, though. That's what Orbit is there for. But everything in the by-war report will trace to orbit. If there's an issue generated, you'll be able to find it in orbit. We also include contributions, value statements, and our lessons learned, and that includes everything above. It may be a repeat of what we've done, but with more details and more focus on what we actually provided rather than what we did. And we also include in there, anytime we review an SCR or a change is driven by an SCR, which again is a software change request, we can track that back to the content list for the CSCI and revision. So that gives us an ability to see which SCRs we've reviewed, which ones we have not, which ones are remaining. Some of them we don't review, but that's a whole nother process. But this lets you trace things back and actually find out what you've done. And again, the report has a consistent format to it. It's got to be done this way. It's always been done this way, and I guess it will always be done this way. For example, we have certain paragraph styles. You can't really rely on the text that people put in, but you can rely on the style being correct to identify what you're looking at. Another example there is the format that we use to identify an SCR. Whenever you have an SCR, you have the word SCR, you have a number, and then you have the title of the SCR following it. So as you can see, it's easy to pick out that number based on that. Same thing for milestone reviews. We use specific names for those. We don't make them up out of the clear blue sky. So again, it just became obvious that the data is there and the data can be found. It was just a matter of putting something together that would do it for us. We use the styles to drive the state machine so that I can find at any point when I'm reading a paragraph in, where am I at? What should my next state be? What should I pull? Should I skip this paragraph? Should I stop parsing? Things like that. Okay, and we just pick it out to pick out the metric data based on the way the text is phrased. And, here's an example of a by-war entry. And you can see here, this was a small review that we did. It was a design and code review. It was for the I/O area. It was related to this SCR 41943. And then I talk a little bit about what we did on that. And there was one issue accepted on that. It's not a formal issue apparently because there's no issue number. So it's probably delivered to the developer by email. Sometimes we'll do that. You can see here are the things that we can pick out at least out of that. There may be more than I listed here. But you can pick out the CSCI from here. And you'll notice that also in addition to this being a CSCI specific work, it's also related to the ICU, which is the Integrated Communication Unit. That's our KU band comm unit on the station. So that's another CSCI that we work on. So this lets us show back and forth how these things are related, how we've done cross CSCI reviews. We've got an SCR number in there, and we've got the number of issues generated. And here's another one. This is a little more complex. This one is for the ICU, actually. And we did a requirement review, and you can see there's a formal number on a requirement review, the requirement change sheet number. And each requirement change sheet will trace to an SCR, so you can see that's there. Again, we provide a little verbiage on what we did, describe the work we did. And this one actually had a formal issue that went into the Boeing PIM system. And there's the number that identifies that if you want to track it down. And you'll also find that PIMS number in orbit, so you can track it down in orbit by the PIMS number. This issue was dispositioned before the report was generated, so it has that information there. And again, these bullets just describe the things that you could pull out of this. CSCI, and that it's a requirement review, and then you can get the RCS number, the SCR number, and the number of issues generated. Okay, so here's where we went after that long weekend I spent in front of the computer. I came in with a prototype, brought it to the innovation team, and everybody liked it, or at least most everybody liked it. Tom liked it, and that's really all that mattered. So he set us loose on this route, and we've gone through, I think 3, maybe 4 by-wars so far. Every time I'll run it, I'll look for things that it should have picked up and didn't, and then make revisions, mostly to the configuration file. Someone decides to put words in a different order, I'll have to add a configuration line to cover that, and then rerun the report. There were some new features added, some things that were just tricky and we had to delay, so it was done in later revisions. And the way it works, it just goes through the input report paragraph by paragraph. Once it's in data parsing state, it just takes a paragraph apart word by word and runs it through a search to identify these phrases and determine what should be pulled out related to those phrases. I didn't get into using regular expressions. I didn't do anything fancy. Again, we were trying to get this done quick and cheap, and I think we accomplished that. And it works pretty well. Another thing that we did was, instead of bringing in a database and, again, additional complexity, we may need it later, but at this point we didn't. I just generated an HTML file, because you can open that up in Excel and do your edits in there. You have all the filtering capabilities, query capabilities, all built into Excel. No special knowledge needed. Everybody knows how to use it. And for every report, we generate one of those files. Again, and this just mentions that we generated it in HTML, not necessarily to look at it as a web page, but because that was the easiest way to get the data into Excel. I could have used automation to do that, but it would have taken longer, and I could just slap this HTML right in there with no problem. So we headed down that route. Again, everybody liked the use of Excel because it's very user-friendly. We use it all day, every day. So there's no training, nothing special needed to know. And then, as I mentioned, we have an individual report or an individual database for each report. The plans right now are to merge those together once they're approved. So you have a sort of version control there, because until your monthly database is approved, it doesn't go into the main database. So you have a choke point there that serves as a sort of version control without being official version control. And here's what it looks like. These are the two, this shows you the two by-war entries, if you can see it. The two by-war entries that I showed earlier. You can see it identifies the report date, the team that did the work, the CNC team, my team, what our activity was that we were doing, the CSCI, other CSCIs, SCR numbers, RCS requirement change sheets, test identifiers. When we do test packages, those will have test names. We track those. Cursors is just another name for any sort of a semi-formal review that's done out of Huntsville. So they have a different name for theirs, but it's really all the same once you get beneath that. If a risk is mentioned, an IV&V risk, we pick it up here, related to a specific milestone, and it goes on. And you see here, the spreadsheet also contains the full text. So if there's something you didn't pick up over here as an individual data item, you can find it in the freeform text. It comes down to that, or you can actually look right at the freeform text right here as you're working with this database, so you're not going back and forth between Excel and Word trying to figure out what's going on, which report should I open. No, it's right there for you. And also notice it identifies separately the IV&V SCR number, where we just have the general SCR number on the other side of the report. These would be SCRs identified here that we actually generated as a report of our analysis here. And finally, it just identifies what kind of a review we did. You can see the first one was both a design and code review. The second one was just a requirements review. And it just ticks those off. There's really no other data to capture there. Okay, as I said, this thing is built with most everything's in a configuration file. And that way we can make changes on the fly without having to recompile, without having to redistribute the software. We just send out a simple text format configuration file. You can just open it up in a text editor, push it in there, send it out. You could also use it use Excel to manage it. It's formatted, Excel can open up a tab format and save in the tab format. So you're able to do that, bring it, manage it in Excel. You can filter it down once you have it in Excel. Again, you use the filters instead of digging through a text file that may have things scattered all over it. And I know you probably, I know you can't see that, but this is an example of what the configuration file looks like when it's opened up in Excel. You can see there's several different paragraph styles here. Basically, what you have is a configuration name in the first column. You have configured value 1 and configured value 2. Configured value 1 in this case is, for example, here is an IA heading, and I know that when I have a paragraph that has the style IA heading, the value that I want to use to drive my state machine is 0. So you can see IA heading, IA header, IA, I can't even read it, IA title are all zeros. They're all equivalent when it comes to the state machine. Then down here in the lower window, you'll also see another. You can see also down here that we have activities, data delimiters, drop phrases, the input word path, and so forth. These are all things that are stored in a configuration file so that we can change them as needed. Okay, and the way we did this, again, we didn't use regular expression, sort of fancy search. We just basically brute forced our way through this. Yeah, better? I don't think so. I have to look down. It's okay. Basically, we had several different types of phrases that found. Self-identifying phrase. The thing you find is it's self-identifying. CSCI. There's really nothing else to capture there once you find a CSCI. Same thing for a milestone, preliminary design review, critical design review, test readiness review, and so forth. It's also something that I call a call and response. For example, if you run into the section functional teams, that means to start. So basically get the response back, start parsing into that. When you run into project management and control, that means stop parsing area. Same thing with paragraph types. Certain drop phrases don't really junk up. No significant activity really doesn't matter. And then there's also a lead follow. For example, with a SCR number, identifiers I showed, SCR, word SCR, the next. Every time you find a number in words, word SCR, SCR number. Follows SCR. Final type there, lead follow trail, sort of a modification of that. So you specialize, focus in on these. You only pick things up. You have the leading phrase, trailing phrase, data associated between those two phrases. One example you'll see there, the second one, U-type protector. Find the string IV&V participated in. You could have IV&V participated in a free lunch at a sandwich shop. You don't want to capture that. But if you find IV&V participated in, and then within so many words after that, the word review, go back and look between those two phrases. We have the same thing for issue counts. In the IV&V generated, that doesn't signify that you generated an issue. But new issues. Again, we don't have to change code, new patterns, sound, as long as it falls within these parameters. Phrases, we have to stick it in the configuration program. These are just a few examples of leading trailing phrases. There's probably 10 more words. Note that it's worked on. Same thing for this. Ours. For example, you have RCS, yes, never know. By using the configuration file, it gives the ability to keep things flowing with software change. Here are some lead follow trailing phrases in generated identifier. grids, configuration file gets submitted. Approach we could be done better. These things are all repeated. Maybe that's R2, cleaner job. Okay, as this thing rolled out, we started running. I was familiar with the way I write my work, familiar with putting other people's inputs into the file. He's on vacation, that's I didn't realize there were certain things in B there, sub-bullets. Difficult. Some leads got it down to two different formats. First form, provide top level sub-bullets. They sort of inherit that. And there's also a strictly a do like put together. Okay, hopefully, yeah, I can hear myself now. Thank you. Okay, so here's an example of the first format where the lead-in paragraph identifies that the following paragraphs are all FQT test reviews, post-FQT test reviews. These would be patches or data changes that are delivered after the software is delivered. So each one of these bullets you'll see has individual information. They're not really related to each other through CSCI type of review it was. So these are actually pretty easy. Here's an example of the second format. We have code review. What this does, it basically makes one paragraph, two paragraphs, binds them all together and rolls them out, broken up this way. Style. So for example, you would see on this one, 0918, 731, those SCRs, no issue. Those will all show up on one date. The way I handled the first format, sorry about that. So the way we handled the first format was by identifying phrases that are lead-in paragraphs, started lead-in paragraphs, given there on the following whatever type of review it is. Then we'll pull any data out of that, identify we'll pull data out of that paragraph. Bullets below it, there are two bullets below that, two data rows. Both the data rows, first paragraph, specific data. Second type was a little trickier. Had to know what type of paragraphs should combine. Blindly combine. Rolling the data together. So what I did there brought it the whole thing a little more complex. Before I was processing 4 by 5 caused me to pre-process. it should combine with another paragraph from the bottom up, not from the top down. Going from the top down is very difficult. I could never get that to work. Coming from the bottom up, it becomes very, very intuitive. You just basically you latch off the paragraph and either push it out or you combine it based upon what the next paragraph style is. And again, it's checked with the most recent prior style. If we have to combine them, we do. And here's a little flow chart to show how I did that. I don't want to go into details on that, but you can see we look to see if it's a leading style, if it's a follower, if we have accumulated text, or if we're accumulating text. And if you follow that through, you'll see the logic of how this works. It's really pretty straightforward, nothing fancy about it. Now, plurals is where things got complicated because people like to say things like, I reviewed test packages 1, 2, and 3. They don't want to say, I reviewed test package 1, test package 2, test package 3. It would have readily picked up the second form, but the first one, not so simple because you really don't know what's following that. You have to try to figure that out. The approach I took for that was to make a quick update to the software to just identify a plural phrase by looking basically for an S on the end. And if it finds a plural form, then it goes into a situation where instead of looking for one following phrase, it looks for multiple phrases. And each one you find has to, each one you look for has to adhere to the same rules as the one would. So for example, there's a rule that says if I find the word SCR, it will have it should have a 5-digit number after it within 2 words. So to do plurals, you look for SCRs, same rule for the first one you find, and then starting from there, moving on out, you apply the same rules. So if you have, and I'll give an example of this here. You can see there on the last bullet, second and third sub-bullet, you can see that when you phrase it and things are within a span of 2, it will pick up all 3 of those. But as soon as you add another word there in that next to last bullet, and the test package, it won't pick that up because it's outside the span. And that was put in there. The span is modifiable again through the configuration file. But if you don't have some sort of a limit on it, it could just go crazy and read out the end of the paragraph and really just, it would just be useless at that point. And it also throws away any commas and things like that that you end up with when you provide an enumerated list like that. Okay, some of the uses that we have for this data. We started out just trying to capture the EBA data so that we could provide assurance at the end of a phase. But then Tom got a look at it and he started realizing he could make use of it for his reports, his STRs, his SMISRs. Also, Nick can use it to track us toward milestones when we come to that. I'm not sure it has enough detail in it to be able to give you your fine level, but at least shows us that we are making progress. It shows what SCRs we've looked at, and from that you can figure out which ones we still have to look at. The team leads can use it to find out what the analysts have done. Everybody has an area that they work in, so the team lead can look at this, filter it down by what was done, and figure out basically where everyone stands on the review work. We can also pull these out. We have summary and periodic reports. We can come back to this without digging through multiple reports, trying to find things manually and just pull them right out of the spreadsheet. Another happy coincidence is we realized that we could use this to go back and look for similarities. If we have a problem that comes in and we know there's another problem that was similar, we can use this spreadsheet to go back and see what we did for the other one, so we can follow the same sort of process with the new one and ensure that our work is consistent. Again, you use it for technical reports. The analysts can also use it. For example, tests come in phases. We have a design review, we have an implementation review. You can quickly go back to this spreadsheet, see what you did for if you've got the implementation test review, you can come to your spreadsheet, look, see what you did on the design review. You can see any issues you generated, so you can make sure they're still there, things like that. So it's very handy from top to bottom. once we get it out there and roll it out and actually have some data in it. And including the original text, that gives you basically unlimited query capabilities. It would be just like adding all those or concatenating all those individual Word documents together. But it's all in a spreadsheet, so you don't have to go through that manual process. You can just open up a spreadsheet. You can use whatever you want to query Excel because it's an Office application. You can query it as a SQL object, anything you want. But the filters could be generally as powerful as you need to go with this. And currently we're getting about 100 data records a month, so this is going to add up quick. We're going to have about 1,200 records by the end of the year for the next stage. This covers everything that the space station team does, all CSCIs. It's not just CNC team, it's all of us. So it runs it all into there, and I think this will be very useful. I mean, there was some concern that we would grow too big using Excel, but Excel is basically unlimited in size. You 65,000 rows at least. So we're not going to get there at least not before I'm finished anyway. After that, it's someone else's problem. Okay, some of the future possibilities I've thought of here. One thing we run into is it seems like some people challenge me sometimes. I know they're not doing it on purpose, but the way they phrase things is like a challenge. Can you get this data or not? So part of me wants to take the information we've built from this, the key phrases and so forth, and develop a system that will actually generate the words for you. You give it the numbers, it gives you the words, so it looks like a person wrote it when in fact all they did was just drop a spreadsheet on it. And because we have so many different combinations of key phrases, you could randomize them and you'd never know it was done by a system. It wouldn't be the same thing over and over. It would actually look like different people had written it. So that's one thing I'm considering. It's again it's going to be more than one long weekend, but that would be something I'd take on myself. Proof of concept. Another thing we've done, because we're now able to actually sort of use the Word documents as sort of a database, we've come up with a couple of other things here. One thing I did, we had a design review recently where for some reason the development team had put multiple documents inside a document. So I had one Word document with 5 or 6 nested Word documents in it. Good and well. Problem is when you search the top level document, you don't search the bottom ones. So I saved all those out separately, made this little application that searches all those documents at once and builds a hit list, has a user interface. You can keep your records of what you've done for each one of those. So for example, if you just want to see everywhere that a semaphore is used in the design document, you could run this on it. It would find it in all the places, and then you could enter your review notes next to that, and you know what you've done, with regard to reviewing for semaphores in that case. I mentioned this to my lead, and he has an idea that we may be able to use this as part of our tech reference generation, because we can search for certain phrases and it'll pull it out, and then we can explain what exactly they're used for in each one of those places. So it gives us technical information we need as long as tracking our reviews. Am I out of time, Jennifer? Okay, one last thing. This is the last one, I think. This is something we're working on now. In the CCS, in the CCS, ISS, SRS's software requirements, there's input-output tables, and it'll list unique identifiers and names for every data item used in a requirement, and they're identified as to whether they're inputs or outputs. So we use this approach to pull out all that tabular data and generate a spreadsheet that shows any input that is also an output. It shows outputs that are outputs in more than one function. And so it just gives us the ability to quickly look into the code. We can take this, look at the code, and start to find out if parallel processing is causing race conditions on the data. So your first output may be changed to 1. The second one may change it to 0. So now you've lost that change to 1. And this will help us to identify those sorts of problems and bring them to attention if they're really problems. And this is something, when FQT verifies things on space station, they just verify the functions in isolation. They're not going to find this. This is going to be the only way to find this. It would even be hard to find using testing because you don't know where to test. This will help us to define the test so that we can focus in on what's going on. And I think that's all. No? Oh, And it's just some details on what it is. It's C sharp. It's uses the Word 14 object library. I used some TLV elements in there. I did that mostly to learn how to use TLVs because it showed up in one of our projects. TLVs are type length value. It's a way to just define data so that you can use it in different contexts. I used a little bit of PHP to convert that just because it's the quickest way to get it done. I've also recently found that I'm able to access Word with PHP, but I'm not sure it gives me anything that C sharp doesn't. And I also included an FSA search. There is the one fancy search where the paragraph style search is for combining paragraphs. Used one of these just because I wanted to do it that way, basically. So now I know that's it. And I don't think I have any time for questions, but I wish I did. If you have any questions, my email's on the first page of this. Please send me an email. Thank you.